Hello, everyone. Welcome to chapter 5, which is the skeletal system. So this is going to be basically, we're going to go over the skeletal system that um, comprises of 4 chapters. The first chapter is the skeletal system, and that talks about bone cells and how they form, how they heal. And chapter 6 is it's going to list all the bones that you know in the axial skeleton. We'll talk about that in the lab. They're first to the skull, and then next chapter is all the bones that are in the appendicular skeleton. That's appendicular bones are the ones that are in your upper limb and your lower limb, to your arms and legs. And then chapter 8 is going to be joints. So these couple of chapters talk about skeletal system. Okay. So, first thing we need to know about the skeletal system is that it's one of the connective tissue types. Remember, we talked about tissue types in chapter 3. We have epithelia, we have connective tissue, and then we have nervous tissue. And skeletal system is comprised of multiple types of connective tissue. And it's one type of connective tissue, then it's going to be comprised of cartilage, then another type of connective tissue, then, another type. So things like ligaments hold the bones together in the skeletal system. And it's the framework of your body, it's a framework of bones. And it's going to basically hold you up against gravity. Imagine not having the skeletal, the bones or the skeleton, and then you're going to be like a jellyfish. You take jellyfish out of water, it basically kind of flops down and falls apart. So what are the functions? In addition to providing a framework to fight against gravity, the skeletal system is also going to protect you. It surrounds your skull, and that protects your brain. It surrounds your heart. The rib cage surrounds your heart and your lungs, and that's also protecting you. It's there to support you against gravity, and you have muscles which are connected to your bones, allows you to move. And then, so it's providing protection, support, and movement. And then your bones are mostly going to be made up of calcium and phosphorus and all those nice minerals. So therefore, if your body needs those minerals and other places, then it can actually steal it from your bones because your bones can be a place for mineral storage. We all know that inside your bones you have red stuff that's called bone marrow, and the bone marrow is the place where your blood is going to be produced. So if you got cancer, then in your bones, then potentially might not be able to you might not be making bone marrow correctly, then you won't be able to make blood correctly either. We call this osseous tissue, so sometimes we call it skeletal tissue. So we call this osseous tissue. Sometimes we call it skeletal tissue. So there are many different terms for this. We call it skeletal tissue or osseous tissue. Os stands for bone, and that's a direct translation from Latin. Os stands for bone, and here you have sometimes, let's say we're talking about your shoulder blade, which is called scapula. They'll call it os scapula because it means scapula bone. Or if we want to say hip bone, it's called coccyx or coxa. Then we say os coxa. So that's going to be, it just os means bone. So there are a lot of different terms that we can use to describe the bone tissue, either skeletal tissue, osseous tissue, and all these names refer to the structure that is modified connective tissue. So that has cells in it. So the cells are here. Let me see. So these are the cells. Those tiny dots are the cells. So you can see this. And then there are these dark things. It looks like tree trunks. So these are the things that are going to be living cells, osteocytes, and there's other stuff in it that's called matrix. The matrix is all of the hard minerals that are made up of calcium, phosphorus, and other kinds of minerals. And that's what kind of creates this hard material that has spaces in it. Some of the spaces have the bone cells in it, so the bone cells and some of the spaces are empty. So you might see some of the spaces might be empty. And so these have bone cells, and you can see some empty spaces there. So most part of the bone is going to be matrix, and that's going to have calcium. And we're going to, in the lab, you're going to see that we have real human bones, and that doesn't have any living tissue in it. So if you take bone, you dry it up, and then you kind of scrape it up, and then you clean it up, and then then you have just a matrix left. You're not gonna have any living tissue in it. Kind of looks like tree trunks. Okay, so next we have different kinds of cells. So you're actually going to find this one is called osteogenic. So osteo means bone, and genic means to generate. So it's kind of a stem cell. Remember I said the osseous and skeletal refers to bone. So osteo refers to bone, and genic refers to generate. So this osteogenic cell generates or creates some bone cells. So what does it create? It could create this guy that's called osteoblast. And I mentioned this last time. Any word that has blast in it, it means to create. So osteo means bone, osteoblast means it creates bone. So what does it create? It creates these osteocytes. And in many lectures, this word here I mentioned, cyte means cell. Blast means to create, and cyte means cell. The osteoblast creates these osteocyte cells that maintain the bone tissue. The last one is the one that you haven't seen before. This one is called osteoclast. Clast means to break down. So let's go ahead and write all these down. So let's see, osteo means bone, and then genic means to generate. And then we have osteoblast. Blast means to form, or and then we have osteocyte. Cyte means cell, and then we have osteoclast, which means to break down. So if osteoclast breaks down the bone, so you might think, why do you want to break down bone? Well, let's say you need to retrieve some minerals that you need. Maybe you need some calcium in other parts of your body for homeostasis. Then osteoclast will go in there and break down bone to release the calcium, so it can be used in other places. Let's say you need to make your bones grow, change shape. As a toddler changes into a teenager, teenager turns into an adult. The bone needs to be modified. So part of the modification is to break down some of the bone and reshape it. And how do you know, you might say, oh, this is osteoblast, this is osteoclast. How can I remember that? So in osteoblast, just think of B standing for building. So build, B for build. So osteoblast is to build your bones. And then here we have osteoclast. So that has a C in it. So the best thing we can think of is to consume. So it breaks down or consumes bone. Consumes the calcium and breaks it down so it can be recycled and used in other parts of your body. So I hope that helps you remember it. We have osteocytes, osteoblast, osteoclast, and then we have this slide. Okay, so these are the cells, living cells, and so this here, osteocyte, that's a living cell, and where they're found, that space is called lacunae, or lacuna for singular, lacunae for plural. Osteocytes are found in lacunae. Okay, so the skeletal system, we have bone, and what's the rest of it? It's going to be this thing called the matrix. That's the ground substance, and it's comprised of ground substance and fibers. And that gave it some extra support. So fibers are going to be collagen, and we heard about elastic fibers. So your bones, they do bend a little bit, and it's going to be wet. So that means there is some water in it. Fresh bone is going to be wet. So it's going to have all these collagen, elastic fibers, water, and then proteins and carbohydrates. And then you get this thing, when you combine those, you get something called proteoglycan. So the word proteo stands for protein, and then glyco means sugar. So glyco means sugar. And then it means to hydrate. It's a type of sugar. So you got sort of a, hybrid kind of chemical that has both components of protein and carbohydrates. So in addition to the ground substance, we'll also have minerals in there, like calcium and phosphorus or phosphates. So that's going to be storage space for these minerals, and when you need to use it in other parts of your body, you can steal it from the bone, and that kind of makes your bones weak, and that's where osteoporosis comes from. So again, if I'm going too fast, feel free to pause it, rewind it, rewatch it. You can rewatch these as many times as you want. So let's see. We have next. So going back, so these are the living cells. These are the living cells. That's what we're looking at. And these cells are going to be trapped in this space. So let me see. I can try to draw circles around it. So these cells, they are trapped here. And if they're trapped, they can't move, they can't go anywhere. Then because the matrix is trapping all these living cells, that's bad because living cells need to get access to nutrients. If you're trapped, then you can't get out, or you can't go and get those nutrients. So what's happening is when matrix grows around it, they're going to be trapped there and they're stuck and they're basically going to starve. So for that reason, how do you feed them? You have all these blood vessels. You have all these blood vessels that are running through the bones, and they will start turning into these capillaries, small capillaries that are feeding the cells, the living cells there. So if you have damage to any of these blood vessels, then you starve the cells in there, then those cells will basically die, and then you have necrosis. Necrosis means dying. So the bone starts to die itself. So if it's alive, then it has to be well supplied with the blood vessels because it's alive. You think of holding a bone that's been dried out, but living bone, you'll see that as you maybe see with the chicken wing dissection, it's actually quite wet and it has this white membrane around it. And if you break into it, that's going to be a lot of bone marrow, and you'll see even blood inside of the bone. So what are these little round things? They're called osteons. So these round things are called osteons. And then another name for it is the Haverson system. So you'll see both names. It's a functional unit of bone. So historically, we called it Haverson system, and the full term, and that's the name. And I've been saying that you need to know both words. So osteon is same thing as the Haverson system. I'll give you credit if you answered either one of those, but I want you to know both because not everybody's consistent when they write papers or articles. They might use a term that what they learned before, the old term, which is the Haverson system. So if you find an old article, they might be calling it this, and if you don't know this one, then you'll be confused. Okay, so we have the osteon here, or the Haverson system. And then each of these circular things, it almost looks like you have a tree and that you cut it down, and then the tree has the rings. So the osteon is, right here. You can see another one here. So, and then here's a zoomed in portion of that. So you can see that. So you got these dark little kinds of circles. Those are called osteocytes, these tiny dots here. And then I mentioned this before, the space where the osteocytes are sitting is called lacuna for singular and lacunae for plural. So if you were to take this E away, then that'd be singular, lacuna, one space, but it's referring to multiple, so it's lacunae. So that's where osteocytes going to live in the fresh bone or in the living bone. But once your bone dries out, then all this living tissue goes away and the lacuna will be empty. So on the quiz, I'm going to ask you, or the exam, I'm gonna put this slide on the microscope and I'll put a pointer or needle somewhere. And the question might say, what's inside the space? Then you want to say osteocyte. But if I write the question like, what is this space called? Then you want to say it's lacuna. So that's how we are going to talk about this. So we're going to be talking about these other cells in a second. We have osteoclast cells, osteogenic cells, and so forth, but they're not they're not in the same place. So where you find the osteocytes are in lacunae. So here's a cross section of bone. This is a humerus bone. And if you cut it like this, you have a cross section of the bone. And then you have this component called the compact bone. That's the hard part on the outside. And then you have this sponge-like bone on the inside, or looks like bubbles or sponge. That's called spongy bone. Outside is, as you saw from maybe, you know, I don't know, when you're looking at the bone in the lab, you will see that the outside bone is going to be hard and the inside there'll be some spongy bone. And then you'll also see when we work with live bones that there's a white outer covering, and that's kind of slick and looks like a membrane. That's called periosteum. So this is periosteum. So that's how that the bone is organized, and it's going to look a little bit different if you don't have a long bone and you're looking at the irregular shaped bone like scapula or coccyx. Then things like that. So that's how it's going to be organized a little bit differently. Okay, next portion is moving into cartilage. So I'm going to stop here and then we'll continue in the next video.